Welcome to The Secret Witch Show, the podcast providing a safe and alchemical altar space of conversations which help powerful women escape a half-hearted, spiritless society and rediscover the freedom of living a wildly magical life. Every other week, we explore how to cast aside the wounds of shame, guilt, and fear connected with fully being yourself, so you can grant yourself permission to stop hiding, ground soulfully back into your body, illuminate your whole soul desires, tend your soul, rediscover and reclaim your powerful gifts, express your magic, and manifest your wildest alchemy. There's no better place to become who your heart longs to be. This is where we will guide you into liberation. I'm your host, Nicole Barton, and I'm so excited to dive in. Welcome, beauties, to the show. How are we all? I am super excited today to share the episode on self-healing our body's pains. It feels like such an important one for the witch, and I hope you love it. It's quite an edgy one, actually, for me, although it's a big listen from my own journey and like probably stuff that I haven't already talked to before in some ways, but there's some parts of this episode that feel like, oh God, did I really just say that? So yeah, I would love to know how you enjoy it, and if you want to share that with me, I would be really happy to hear from you. I also was just reflecting on how I receive loads of compliments of our top 10% show, which really fills my heart with just so much love. And I'd love to ask you a favour. If you are a fan of the show, please would you leave a 5-star review? If you think it's 5-star. There's some already, but it means so much to our little podcast. And what I do know is that for many secret witches, that maybe don't want to share our show more widely, because there's that fear that comes up of being a not so secret witch. It's like, oh, I don't want to be seen that I'm listening to this. And so often it can struggle to get shared, although we have reached we're top 10%, so we've reached a lot of secret witches, but every review counts and is a way that we can kind of share with more people and invite people to listen. So please, if you're loving our show, please do review either on any of the platforms that you listen to the show on. So yeah, I'd love if you supported us. If you've loved the show, like a treasure trove of remedies, I would really appreciate your support. On the show today, though, I'm sharing Magical Healing 101, exploring my perspective on how to heal our body's physical pains by entering an initiation into our witch and learning to harness alternative healing magic. So I invite listeners into a new worldview of healing science and art that contrasts to the mainstream way. I discuss my own journey with pains like chronic fatigue, menstrual pains, endometriosis, thyroid imbalances, exploring allopathic versus holistic healing and emphasising the need to illuminate underlying causes of physical pains. In this episode, I explore the importance of expressing our uniqueness rather than suppressing ourselves, which I believe to be the cause of disease, explaining some universal laws. I also invite you to claim your power to heal yourself, sharing how we can do that by learning to work with that inner apothecary of archetypal remedies and offering some practical steps as well to begin this, along with an invitation to reclaim your self-healing power. Let's dive in. Welcome, magical ones, to the Secret Witch Show. And today I am talking all about how to heal our body's pains magically. And do you know, the more I was thinking about this topic, the more I was like, this is what I'm here for. Because it's been such my journey. Like, this has been my own kind of initiation to the witch, which I'll speak more to. But I guess the reason why I chose this subject, or actually you chose this subject, but I offered it as an option, is because so many witches get called to my work because they're experiencing physical pains. Often mysterious physical pains, things like body aches, neck and back pains, fibromyalgia, menstrual pain, endometriosis. And it got me thinking to offer it as a topic, like, it's these kinds of physical health challenges and how they're not met by the mainstream medical system often, that is usually what has us begin to look at a more alternative route to healing our body's pains. often kind of that initiation into magic. And as I mentioned, it was very much my own journey into the witch too. And I often describe this, as I've just described it, like as an initiation, and how kind of my own journey with chronic fatigue syndrome when I was 10, which the doctors just didn't get. We kind of called it yuppie flu, and like it just was so misunderstood back in those days. But it kind of initiated me into a journey of seeking healing. And so my mum, as I've shared in other episodes, my mum took me to all the witches that she could find, because the mainstream medical system just couldn't at that time offer any support. And I share that because that's often how we are called by the witch. Like that's often how she calls us, and we don't see it that way when we're in it, which is understandable. Like it makes sense that we wouldn't be like, oh, cool, I'm in an initiation right now with the witch. Like that's just not something that makes sense to our society. It's not something that even makes sense in the way that we're feeling. Like when we're in that initiation with health, like it's just not something that feels like the way an initiation could be kind of felt is like this sense of like, ooh, we're going into some kind of portal. Like that's not how that feels. When we're in pain, we're in pain. It's miserable. We feel like awful. And so my heart goes out to you if you're listening to this episode and you're thinking, that's me, like I'm in pain. Like I am just wrapping you in love, first and foremost, because the medicine, of course, is love, but we're going to talk more about the medicine and how to heal ourselves. But ultimately, to just even acknowledge that this could be your initiation into the witch, and by the witch I mean into self-healing as well in particular, because often that's how she calls. And simultaneously, she can often also be calling us to live our destiny as a healer, because I know many people who are listening to the show also have a sense like I'm going through this for some reason so that I can like heal it for myself and then offer it to the world. And that's really very much how it goes with the witch, because to become medicine women, which is another word for witch, we have to like drink our potion first, like healing ourselves so that we can go on to help others heal and do the same. And so what I'm going to be speaking to today is not necessarily like the practical steps of how to heal ourselves, although I do offer some of those at the end, so listen right through to there. But more like, this is one of the common questions that I'm asked. And so I wanted to speak to it because I have particularly quite a unique view on self-healing that is so vital to understand before we move into the practical. Because when you're choosing to work with the witch, when you're choosing to work with archetypal apothecary, which is my path, like, there's a deeper conscious choice into almost like a worldview change. And so my work, like my great work, I'm the woman who is here to help other women learn how to self-heal, learn how to stop outsourcing our pain to others, and how to like work with that ourselves to heal ourselves. And that doesn't just mean like mental, emotional, that can be on all levels. So soul, spirit, and physical, which is what we're here to talk to today. So let's dive in first and foremost to why that's so important and like how we can begin. So the first thing I want to talk to is, I'm going to call it the 3 wisdom bodies of my path that kind of helped me create the path and the wisdom that I share now. But first and foremost, I want to talk to homeopathy, because homeopathy, and you may well not have heard of homeopathy before. It doesn't really matter if you haven't. It might be that you're already familiar with homeopathy. Either way, like this is a path for like anyone. And you will go as deep or as deep as you want to go. But ultimately, whether you're already a homeopath or whether you've never heard of it before, homeopathy is important to discuss, because homeopathy, like, is part of the wisdom body, is one of the wisdom bodies of my path. But also know that as I'm saying that, this episode is not just about homeopathy, because it's one of the wisdom bodies. So this is about the witch and her inner apothecary, which you can learn how to access for self-healing on all levels, including your body's pains. Now I'm going to start with talking to the worldview piece, because what we're really talking about when we're talking about healing magically is healing in a different way to how we know. Like, we've been taught in our culture, like in our society, how medicine works. Science defined how medicine works. And what we call that is You might hear me use the word allopathy. Allopathy. And allopathy was a term created by the founder of homeopathy, I believe, Hahnemann, meaning opposite. Allo meaning opposite and pathos meaning to suffer. So allopathy, known as modern medicine, operates on that kind of scientific approach of treating a symptom rather than the cause. So homeopathy has a very different approach, which I'll talk to in a moment. But ultimately, what's helpful to know is that the mainstream medical system, as we know it in society, offers on the idea that we are treating a symptom rather than the underlying cause. It's the very definition of what I call quick fix healing. We're putting sticky plasters on. It's like a sticky plaster approach, and it's plastering over or maybe cutting away disease. So that's generally how mainstream medicine works. And that's helpful to know, particularly the piece about opposite, because often, we'll give something opposite in mainstream medicine to try and like plaster over it. How homeopathy works is homeo means similar, pathos means suffering, as we know. And so what homeopathy does is it's grounded in universal healing magical laws of similia similibus. And what that means is like cures like. So this is the philosophy that a substance that causes symptoms in a healthy person can be used to treat similar symptoms in a sick person. In homeopathy, that's in diluted form, in potency in water. But because homeopathic remedies are generally kind of made from natural substances, so plants, minerals, animals, which I call queendoms, and then put into like little pills that we take. That's the traditional way to work with homeopathy. That's not how I work. I'm going to expand more on that. But homeopathy is, in essence, believed to stimulate the body's natural healing processes. So this is very much about learning how to heal ourselves, learning how to stimulate our body into its own natural healing process. So this is the reclamation, really, of our self-healing power. And that is a radically different approach to what we know in the modern world of healing, the modern medicine. Well, we'll go to a doctor and they give us, they be like, okay, take these pills. And it's grounded in the theory of opposites. So it's the direct opposite, in essence. And homeopathy is something that has changed my life. Like I have healed so much through using homeopathy and some of the other things that I'm going to speak to. But ultimately, homeopathy is a way of helping us powerfully claim our magic, to own our inner witch and her capacity to heal, to be able to self-heal ourselves. But often that does, as I mentioned, require some form of initiation into healing, like pain. So that's why we're talking about it in this episode. And that was, as I said, very much my own journey, and often can be the journey of a secret witch. He's kind of like had this pain, and then she goes into like, oh, well, do you know what? Mainstream allopathy is not working for me. Like, I'm going to learn magic. I'm going to learn how to do energy healing or, work with herbs or whatever it is that we've tried until this point. Like, it's this kind of new way that we start to learn. And maybe we're doing that in the background as like a secret witch, hence the word secret witch, the phrase secret witch. If you're just listening to this for the first time, you're like, what is a secret witch? Like, maybe we've kind of opened to this new world of healing and we're like, oh yeah, I'm going to play with all these potions secretly. And we're required to learn this magical new way of working with self-healing. The beauty of that, though, is once we've learned how to self-heal and work with healing in that way, we have the knowledge of how to heal ourselves. And not just that, we also have the knowledge of like being able to consciously choose our support team. And I'll talk more to that as well, and what I mean by that. But before we dive in, I just wanted to say, like, this episode is likely worldview changing, if you will allow it. And so it's like paradigm changing almost is how I view it, because I'm aware that what I'm about to share probably requires a certain level of openness to a worldview change. Firstly, that what causes something cures it, rather than it being that we treat something by cutting or sticky plastering or treat it with drugs that suppress and create other symptoms. It's the worldview that we heal from the inside out. And there might be a part of you who's already kind of dabbled in that, but this is like the deepening into like truly knowing the art and science of that way, of that process. And so for that, what I would say is, if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I'm not really sure, which is understandable, the secret witch usually doubts magic, even though she's also simultaneously drawn to it. She's like, oh yeah, give me all the woo. But then you also like, oh, but can I trust this? I'm not sure. Like, it makes sense. And we have to kind of choose to open, or at least open our hearts and stay a little bit in like, oh, curious about trusting the process. Because one of the things that often comes up when people enter this path is it takes longer than allopathy. It takes longer to heal ourselves than to have a quick fix, hence the name quick fix. But it's also more natural, more holistic, like we're all unique. We have our own things that will help us. Like everybody needs a different remedy. And it also has the power to cure the underlying real cause of symptoms that's often missed when we just treat the surface, when we treat the symptom. And so we have to kind of open our hearts. If you're listening to this episode, I just invite you to like open your heart to leaning into this way, because it also works as well by sometimes causing what I call healing responses, or we get material for liberation, which means that sometimes when these things come at us and it's like, oh no, there's another layer, like we can doubt that it's working. Sometimes a remedy might not do anything. We might not receive anything in the journey. And that might be because that particular remedy isn't an energetic match. And so there's like a trial and error that goes on in true self-healing that is not kind of, it doesn't fit with what we've been taught about, oh, there's a quick fix sticky plaster, there's a prescription, go and do that. And we have that direct, like, okay, we've put the eczema cream on, the eczema's gone. Cool. Like that's what we're looking for because it seems easier. And sometimes it is a longer process, a much more nuanced process, the work of self-healing. But it is also true. The other basic premise of homeopathy is that all disease or dis-ease is a direct result of suppression. Now, this is a huge kind of universal law or principle that we need to understand, in that the science of homeopathy discusses that suppression of symptoms, which is, by the way, what allopathy does, whether mental or physical or spiritual, like leads, the suppression leads to serious deep pathology and severe psychological disorders, is what homeopathy believes. So the clinical philosophy of homeopathic medicine believes that any physical or mental emotional symptom is an expression of inner disharmony. And the idea that illness comes from suppression is another bold assertion. I know it is, because people are like, well, that doesn't make sense. Like, it's just not what we're taught. But I have seen this to be true over and over again. I've felt it in my own body. And if we look at allopathy, its main method of healing is suppression. Like, we'll cut it away, or we'll put like some suppressing cream on them that eventually will result in the disease process either going deeper inwards into other organs, or maybe speeding up, or some kind of other response that we don't want. And this feels really edgy to speak out, because I also want to make clear I am not anti-science or anti-medicine. And you might be shocked by that, because many other holistic healers are. Often we'll find homeopathy or something like that. And it tends to be that when we're just finding something new, often we'll find something new and be like, oh my God, this is the answer. I completely reject science and medicine and all the other things. It's like we swing from one end of the pole to the other, like blindly trusting science to blindly trusting holistic medicine. And that's just another end of the shadow pole. That's just another end of wounding. So unlike many people, I've done the work to integrate that and become an advocate of really the third way, which is us being able to know how to make conscious, powerful health choices for ourselves, which can include allopathy as part of our support team, especially for life-threatening things, like, or not. And there might be a fine balance. You know, I will sometimes go for a scan because I'm feeling some sensation and I want to know more about it. That's them being a really helpful support to my powerful choice about how to move forward with that sensation, with that symptom. Yes, I will probably likely use homeopathy, but it's also helpful to have the information, the data. So like it's I still believe in the piece about suppression. And some examples that I feel edgy to speak out from popular culture, from our culture, that are concerns to many people who have turned their backs on mainstream medication, and that I've seen patterns that show up and things like that, are examples like, I kind of mentioned it, the childhood eczema that maybe we had that was suppressed with steroid cream. This is an example of my own. Like, I had eczema. I had steroid cream from the doctor to get rid of it, and it got rid of the eczema. But then how many times has that become childhood asthma? That moved into my lungs. I got pneumonia. So I didn't get asthma. That is a common pattern. Like, eczema will go to asthma. But I got pneumonia because I was particularly a sensitive constitution, which I'll talk to you more later. Phosphorus. That was who I was born as, archetypal phosphorus. You don't need to understand what that means now. But they're particularly sensitive. They're also the witch. The witch is particularly sensitive to medications often. And so eczema becomes asthma. It's gone from a skin, which is the top surface level, into inner organs, the lungs, and driven the disease process inwards. How many of you developed asthma after having eczema or some kind of skin thing suppressed with steroids? Another example that Hahnemann talks about in his early work with homeopathy, which is hundreds of years ago, is how back in those days they would notice like a tumour being cut away and then growing back faster. That was documented in much of his work. Another example that's very controversial, and I don't want it to be a diversion from the truth, but is many people's ideas about vaccination is that it suppresses the immune system and stimulates other deeper expression of disease. So whether that's like lumps or, often there's talk of neurodivergence and autism. This is a controversial one, I know. And so I don't want to distract too much. But even the other day, I was talking to somebody, which is why this example was present, about their baby getting a skin complaint. And I asked, when did they have their vaccines? And the reply was 2 days ago. And so, again, like for me, actually, in many ways, that was a healthy expression. It was a good sign because it was like the expression through the surface layer of like, let's detox this. And it's just interesting. So I'm not going to get into the vaccine debate right now because it's a diversion from the truth that I'm here to share. And as I mentioned, I'm here to empower choice. So let's move on. But the point is, a big part of self-healing is, rather than seeing symptoms as a problem, a problematic thing, as the allopathic lens does, and thinking that the disappearance of a symptom is an indication of cure, let's look more holistically at what our symptoms show us about the deeper underlying patterns that are causing them. Like, we're so used to, I was talking to another woman the other day, one of my one-to-one clients about this, like we're so used to shaming our symptoms and pathologizing them, particularly things like anxiety, depression, that we can often miss the gift that they're showing us, they're offering us, if we're willing to move into them. Particularly things like anxiety and depression. Like there's information in those. There's information in physical pains. And this is how we start to heal, by beginning to listen to what we're being shown by our body. Because really, what any physical symptom or pain is showing us is where we have suppressed ourselves, especially our emotions. Because if we deny our emotions, our wounded emotions especially, they will manifest in the body. We say we journey from inner to outer. And so inner is emotions. Inner most level is emotions. As we suppress our emotions, they will manifest physically. So to heal physically, we have to unsuppress our emotions. And ultimately, that is showing us, suppression is showing us where we are disconnected from the full expression of our souls. Our bodies are showing us, usually in their physical pains, where we are disconnected from the full expression of our souls. And there's evidence for that in terms of like Kent, who's another famous homeopath who did a lot of work with Hahnemann. He said that, and this is one of my favourite quotes, there is no cell or tissue so small that it does not keep its soul and life force in it. And we talk about the vital force, the life force, a lot in homeopathy. But ultimately, what that's meaning is, like, every cell has an aspect of your soul. So when it's diseased, there's some suppression of our souls. That's why I often talk about self-healing as being about soul healing, the reclamation of our souls and our true authentic expression. Because as we heal and reclaim our true expression, our physical symptoms will often fall away. And it appears like they're falling away. They're not really falling away. We're just manifesting differently. We're creating more consciously and intentionally with our health. And so I'm just going to pause there because that's a lot of information. And also, if you're like, okay, I'm not sure I believe this, we have to ask ourselves, why? If allopathy is so successful, are we in more and more pain as a society, physically, mentally, emotionally? And just to be clear again, I'm not anti-allopathy. I'm a big believer that much modern medicine is doing wonderful, life-preserving things. And we want to be able to incorporate it into our support queendom, our team, if it feels true to us. But my passion really is about reconnecting women to their inner witch, to their own self-healing wisdom, because the witch is a wise woman, and helping her connect to her own power to know what is aligned for her in her healing. That is my mission. And I do that through my modality. So if we're talking about how to heal our pains, this is very much kind of the how. And I'm going to share more about what I saw about that created my modality. But archetypal apothecary is what I'm speaking to. And that has the medicine, that has the way of how we heal our pains. And the thing to know about this is that I don't work with just homeopathy anymore. Though I practiced for many years, homeopathy instead is, as I mentioned, one of 3 ancient lineages of my past. So I combined 3 ancient wisdom bodies together, having really journeyed with them that way myself. I started to notice as I was journeying that I was kind of combining these 3 things. And that was having real impact for me in a way that nothing really ever had before. Not totally, it hadn't created lasting change. So one of those is homeopathy's energy medicine, which has a whole host of universal laws and principles and the art and science of healing around similis, similibus, and magical healing. So that kind of has the real kind of energy medicine piece that is so powerful. But I also worked with, and I've talked to that, but I also worked with archetypal psychology. And in particular, I worked with archetypal work to explore the psyche, working mainly with divine feminine archetypes, the goddesses. And for a while, I taught those, especially the witch. A lot of my work was centered around the witch, but I also had the divine feminine oracle, Megan Watterson. I've got it here to those who are watching on video on our channel. And so I worked with those quite deeply and taught those, particularly the witch, until I realized that with only those as a map to our healing, we were missing something that homeopathy offered. So unlike in homeopathy, in archetypal work, there's only really an mental emotional map available. And what I mean is by a map, it's it's only got a lens for us to look at our psyche. So we know the personality profiles of archetypes. We can use them as a lens for self-discovery, and they can help us rediscover and embody lost parts of ourselves psychologically, like the witch. The witch is a great example of an archetype. And she's also an archetypal remedy, but she's an archetype. She's one of the mainstream archetypes. And we can see that she's had her true self suppressed. So as a personality profile, she represents somebody who's suppressed herself because of the fear of her magic, the fear of being outcast, the fear of being burned at the stake for her truth. She's a secret witch. That's the archetypal witch. She's the woman who hides herself because of the witch wound. There was no physical map though in archetypal work, and that's what I started to see surrounding the witch. There was a great lens to look through of her emotional state, her mental emotionals, but there was no physical map. And as I was working with the witch, I started to work with aspects of myself with other archetypes. And so in particular, I started to see that there were many remedies that made up the witch. In particular, phosphorus. Phosphorus is a substance on the end of a match, which lights the match. So fire, for obvious reasons, the witch being burned at the stake. And phosphorus is very much the witch. There are other remedies that contributed to the archetype. what the beauty of that was that I started to see was that these remedies, which I now call archetypal remedies, had a physical healing map too. So, for example, archetypal remedy phosphorus can help us heal fatigue, muscle and bone symptoms, nervous system overload, headaches, lung symptoms, dizziness, circulatory issues, anemia, left-sided symptoms. Don't ask. I'm not gonna talk to the weird and wonderful, strange symptoms that this physical map has, but it does, and they can be very prescriptive. So, but the beautiful thing to see here is like these are still archetypal remedies. They're still archetypes. They still have the mental emotional picture of each remedy, which I'm going to talk to more as well. But they also have a physical map of what we can work with them for healing. And just a caveat, this isn't a prescriptive of the remedy you should take if you are suffering those things. I'm not offering a single prescription of being like, okay, if you suffer from like headaches or dizziness or anemia or, all of those things, or burnout is another one. Like, I'm not saying like, okay, go work with phosphorus, because that's, again, a very prescriptive way, which is very allopathic. And so I'm not offering like a single prescription. Instead, with self-healing, there's a process that we work with to determine specifically what your unique remedies are. And I work with this via our soul maps, especially, that if phosphorus is your aligned remedy, then she could well help heal some of these physical things if she's the most similar remedy to the symptoms. Remember, like yours like. So there's a whole process of determining your remedies. But the point is, there's a map of what each remedy offers for our physical healing. And each remedy, and there are over 4,000 remedies, has a whole host of what we also call physical provings, aka like hundreds of years of case studies of what remedy has healed what. And that's what Hahnemann used to do. He used to give people remedies and study what that would cure. And this is how he discovered homeopathy. So there's like hundreds of thousands of case studies of what remedy has healed what physically, and a whole what we call a materia medica, which is almost like a dictionary of the common things healed with each remedy. I should have probably grabbed my book actually to show you what a materia medica looks like. But I've got one here in front of me. It's not one of my main ones, but it's just helpful to get a little bit of a picture. Let me look up phosphorus if you're watching. The actual video. Wow, some juicy ones in here. You didn't even realise that was in there. Okay, let me find it. The phosphorus, I have highlighted it. Okay, so just for those who are listening on audio, like it says, the main feeling of phosphorus is being unloved and uncared for, to which the patient reacts by being affectionate, friendly and sympathetic. Phosphorus has a wide-ranging sensitivity and reactivity, sensitive to all emotions, anger, fear and grief, and has the unique symptom hot flushes from excitement. We have a fear of thunderstorms, ailments from grief, etc., etc. It goes on and on and on, but it talks about the physicals as well. So it's really helpful to just see that there is like, they have their own personality, but they also have their physical symptoms. So going back to what I was sharing, that's what I started to see, is like there's a physical layer map that when we work archetypally with homeopathic remedies just isn't available in archetypal work on its own. So I started to see that because homeopathic remedies still have personality profiles, so as I just described them, and really to sum up, that wasn't a great description of phosphorus, but to sum up phosphorus in my language, she's bright-eyed, she's sensitive, she's open, she's the kind of life and soul of the party in her healthy expression. In her burned out expression, which is kind of her deep wounding, she's exhausted, she's shut down, she feels deeply sensitive. So she has this kind of like emotional personality. And what we're looking for in energy medicine and archetypal remedies is the closest match to the personality and the physicals, which would be called the similar or most similar remedy. Now, I'm aware this is becoming quite theoretical and like almost like a lecture. I don't want it to be that. And it's just theory to you as I share at the moment. That's okay. Like, I'm just exploring some of the ways that this can help with healing. Some of the ways that we can begin to know that there is a route to healing ourselves. There is a science, there's an art to this. But what I saw was that remedies essentially can work much in the same way as archetypes, but there are also hundreds of years of physical provings of what symptoms each remedy helps cure in the body, aka our pains. And as I was working with some of the archetypes, so for example, I started working with the Queen and started to notice, like, hang on, the Queen maps to Aurum, like Aurum or gold is the Queen archetype. But Aurum also helps cure depression and physical menstrual symptoms, among other things. And that opened up this whole new, yet also ancient map for how we can begin to heal ourselves with remedies as archetypal remedies. And then started to realise that was the kind of second ancient wisdom body. Along the way, I started to realise about self-healing that instead of people taking the pills that I prescribed, even if I would just have a conversation about a particular archetypal remedy to women that I was working with, I was like channeling this into the collective. And they would have a healing response as if I had actually had them take the remedy. And that's when I started to realise we don't even need to work with a homeopathic prescription. Like, we can channel these remedies for ourselves. We can work with the third ancient wisdom body of energy healing. So I began to work with women channeling the remedies, helping them to channel them themselves to create not only mental and emotional and physical healing, but yeah, also healing our body's physical pains. And so this kind of potent combination of homeopathic medicine, number one, archetypal psychology, number two, and energy healing, number three, helped me to see that we can literally work with what I now call archetypal remedies which is the combination of those things, for healing on all levels: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and soul, for the deepest self-healing. And that's kind of mind-blowing. Like, it's mind-blowing that arrived to me. Like, I'm so grateful that chose me to like share this wisdom. And yeah, I'm going to move into a question, because there's a question here from one of our members in the Secret Witch Sisterhood. And it's a really potent question that is really helpful to speak to. And then I'm going to continue with wherever we go next. But ultimately, the question is, I have a question. I just found out that I have hypothyroid. It's made me feel horrible this last year. I'm taking castor oil. That's about it, because the instructions went for a bunch of crap it caused the body all the way to the other end of this can cause death. I take 20 milligram of Paxil, which is an antidepressant, and would love to get off them. I'm mainly concerned with the hypothyroid first. Do you know what I could try? I do teas, melon, lamb's wool, my yard meds, plant roots like dandelion. So, in answer to your question, first and foremost, like, honestly, your courage to share that question. And by the way, I wasn't able to tag you in the group and say, like, I was going to include this question. So I'm going to try again. But I just wanted you to know that if you're listening. But firstly, yeah, I just so feel your heart in this question. I have suffered with thyroid symptoms myself. And my family also has it in its ancestral lineage. And I know that even just the journey of like diagnosing thyroid can often be challenging, because TSH, there's a lot of kind of mix up around TSH and your TSH hormone levels and like what their normal was. So sometimes we can be suffering with thyroid symptoms without actually it coming up in the results, without doing deeper tests. And so I've been on that whole journey, and like, I just want you to know, like, that yeah, I'm loving you so deeply in that, and that there's also possibility here. Because I had what the doctors decided was Hashimoto's as a label, and also had then got problems with when I was pregnant with, I think it's hyperthyroidism, but Hashimoto's often flips between hypo and hyper. And so I know the extreme fatigue, dizziness, like awful sensations, that insomnia that comes with thyroid challenges. So I feel your heart. And I also want to acknowledge the amazing power that you have to be trying new things. Like, I can clearly feel a power in you that's like, there has to be another way. And I think before I even share any more, like, that is so worth acknowledging, because we kind of often don't acknowledge that. Like there's a real power in that, in going against the grain and being like, okay, there must be a natural way to heal this. So what a gift you are in a world that blindly follows medicine without making a conscious choice to do so, often innocently. And to be clear, there's also no invalidation of choosing that. Like, we're all different, as I've said, we all have choice. And sometimes, that can be a very valid choice for people, especially those who maybe haven't learned how to heal themselves yet and maybe aren't sensitive to drugs. Because some constitutions just are. The phosphorus or the witch is often deeply sensitive to medication. So I know often that's why women often end up here wanting another option. And that was very much my own journey. But for some people, the drugs are fine. And so what I did was just to get a full picture. And I don't know whether this is something you've explored and I'm not making any medical advice here. But just out of curiosity, I had a quick look at Paxil or paroxetine in the BNF, the Mainstream Medical Systems British National Formulary guidance on, and that didn't really show much. There's a whole host of side effects that came out, but it wasn't what I was looking for. But then there was a study that I saw that came up when I just Googled, in honesty, from 2007, I think it was, on how paroxetine is a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, which is widely used as an antidepressant. And it says it has rare but severe adverse effects, particularly on thyroid hormone. In simple terms, it can lead to symptomatic hypothyroidism, creating decrease in thyroid hormone levels. And now, just to be clear, as I share that, I am not providing medical advice. I'm not saying do not take that anymore. I'm not a mainstream medical doctor. I'm a homeopath. And I'm also not saying that the antidepressants aren't needed to keep you safe. I'm also not saying, come off them. One of my mentors once said there's a wisdom in the drugs sometimes, which I love, because we often want to take out the shame that can be inflicted by often, again, even those healers who have swung to the opposite end of the pole, like, no, drugs are the devil. Let's take that out, the shame, because many healers do feel we shouldn't be taking drugs. And that's not helpful to us making sovereign conscious choice about what's aligned for us. But what is helpful in that is to illuminate and begin to open to illuminating that there may be some kind of possible pattern that is unconsciously chosen here, so that you can choose consciously and innocently, because it's not what we've been taught. So what I am highlighting that for is there may be some other stuff going on in this that's helpful to see. There's information here. And again, I'm clear that this is not prescriptive, and this is often very frustrating. So I'm imagining that possibly you wanted a bit more clear cut, okay, do this, this, and this. And this is one of the biggest objections to walking the path of self-healing that I come across. But it's important, and your Christian has so beautifully illuminated it, because it illuminates the fact that we are unique in our expression of health. Everyone has a different body, everyone has a different background, everyone has a different experience, everyone has different cells, everyone has different patterns. We are unique. And so there is no one size fits all, and we all need unique medicine. And that is part of the challenge to a more holistic approach to self-healing. And it's because unconsciously, because of how we've been shown that medicine should work, we want the quick fix. We want the doctor to say, take this pill. We want to avoid making mistakes ourselves. We want the easy route. It's easy. We can just pack things in and it's gone. And even to the degree this has been conditioned in us, innocently, some homeopaths will still work therapeutically, as we call it, by prescribing. And sometimes that's helpful to meet people where they are in the prescription mode. So, for example, it could be that you might find help from a therapeutic prescriptive remedy like thyroidinum, which is one of the archetypal thyroidinum, is, often a thyroid remedy, as you can imagine. Or it might be that that's a remedy that doesn't seem to work because there's something else underlying going on. And so what I'm here to help you or invite you to ask of yourself is, what if your hypothyroidism is actually a result of an underlying mental emotional pattern or some other pattern, perhaps a pattern of shame or fear that could be illuminated with an archetypal remedy that's had you suppress something of your soul. Maybe that could be, as an example, like creating the depression that has you on antidepressants, if that's what you're on them for. I don't have enough information to be able to actually answer this. So I'm like merely speaking to a great example of a process. Again, this isn't a prescription. But like, what if this is a pattern which you could heal yourself by working with archetypal remedies? And just to be clear, I'm not saying come off the drugs again. Like this, that if you wanted to, and that was something you wanted to work towards, you could do. And like, let's find out what's true for us, for you. And so I guess the point is that there are layers to our healing. We're like onions, and we have to kind of start at the outer layer and work back through each layer and discover and heal as we go. So how do we do that? I'm hearing you say, it's like, okay, well, what do I do? Because I just wanted like an answer. Yeah, I totally feel you. I'm kind of frustrated with it myself, to be honest. I wish there was like okay, this is the button. I'm going to press this and you're going to be healed. Because I'm like feeling all the impatient witches listening to this in pain and being like, oh, this is like, it's going to take forever. It's not straightforward. I hear you. I feel you. I have been there. I still am at times. You know, I've healed my so-called uncurable chronic fatigue, my paralyzed face, thyroid issues, endometriosis, pre-diabetes. Recently, I had a challenge with my foot, which took 3 months to heal. And I really wanted a quick fix for that. There was a quick fix. It would have been steroids. But I knew that that was not the answer. And I was told again, like, you're not going to heal this without steroids. And again, I was like, yes, I am. And I did. So I hear you. I feel you in the slowness, in the sense of like, oh, this isn't straightforward. This isn't the answer I wanted. But there is one answer that helps. And so the answer, as you might have guessed, is the witch and her inner apothecary. So if you are wanting to self-heal physically, the way I often share how I see it working is we need our initiation into the witch first. We need to be willing to enter our initiation into magical healing. So those physical pains, as much as we want to like get rid of them, they're calling us down, down, down into our bodies to begin to unravel patterns, to begin to heal ourselves, to begin to make things conscious that haven't been conscious. And the witch is a symbol of our inner self-healer and our inner healing wisdom. The creatrix within us who can heal and create her health differently. So she's a symbol of power, magic, and authenticity, that unsuppression of parts of ourselves. And I see the witch, or archetypal phosphorus, if you want to see her as that, the wounded healer who's being called to heal herself. And any pain that we experience is a calling to activate in this part of ourselves. Like, you can hear it in the beautiful question we had, like, I'm in pain, how do I heal myself? That is a call to the witch. It's an activation. It's that initiation into your power, into your magic, into full expression. And there's a part of us that when pain came along and hurt us, knew that she was being called to the witch. You wouldn't be listening to this if not. You're being called into healing ourselves so that maybe even we can live our destiny healing others, even though we might resist that with all our might, like longing for others to heal us, for it to be easier. We'll be on our knees in pain, being like, oh, why can't we just have a sticky plaster? Why can't we just have a quick fix? And if it helps us temporarily whilst we're doing the deeper work, we can. Remember, that is also valid to choose. I remember. And I see the witch as a portal to learning how to harness what I call our inner apothecary of archetypal remedies for self-healing. I love the visual that I had of this a little while back, and I often envisage this apothecary as like this little cupboard in our psyche where we can go and visit, and there's this like ancient little library of archetypal remedies, and they're all in like these ancient little medicine bottles on the shelves, and there's thousands of them. We're like, we can reach up and take one down and learn how to work with them, like taking one off the shelf at a time. One, because we want to work with one remedy at a time to show us like what it needs to show us and not be confused about which remedy is showing us what. Minimum dose, law of minimum dose. And opening the lid and seeing what it has to reveal. And as we work with each remedy for self-illumination, we begin to notice things healing on all levels, because we've healed maybe something emotional that's now manifesting something different in the body. And then we might have another remedy come in and we work with that, healing something else, another layer of the onion healed. And several women, it also fills my heart, several women have described the apothecary as like having a bunch of new friends that can help you heal. Or one would described it as having a load of fairy godmothers helping her, like a team of spirit remedies to help you. It's ultimately nature in a bottle, operating as a mirror to help you heal aspects of yourself. And as beautiful as that is, I'll also be honest, like it is a hard journey. It requires you to relearn, as I said, a new worldview of healing. It requires us to decondition that mainstream model of health. It requires us to open our hearts to trusting a new way that we might not understand the how of. But it's also a path that I get emotional when I think of like the pain that I have healed. And when I think of and reflect on the pains that other women that have worked in this path and what courageously chosen the path, like when I think of what they've healed, like my heart is so full of gratitude for this medical system. And yes, like we might get judged for our woo. Like I know in my own journey of homeopathy, particularly because homeopathy is often not liked by the mainstream medical world. Like it's complementary medicine. So I don't understand why not. Like it can be used alongside, as I said, mainstream medicine, and like there's so much hate for it. And I remember my homeopathy teacher who's coming on the podcast actually, one of my the owners of the college said once, like, people will only resist what's actually true. And so the fact that we're getting so much resistance to magic, to woo, shows that people are a little bit like, oh God, the truth's coming out. And so like if you're feeling like, oh God, yeah, this sounds amazing, like this is magical, like I want to heal myself magically, like notice where there's some fear around that even. Like the witch has this fear of being burned at the stake. And I had to navigate that, as I remember like being judged as a charlatan, as I shared on social media when I was first sharing about homeopathy. And so it's edgy for me to show up and share this episode. Like it's edgy. You know, all the controversial topics I'm talking to, like going against the mainstream medical system, the big pharma, you know, all of those things, like it's edgy. Because witches were burned at the stake. And yet I feel so much gratitude that I allowed myself to trust that. Not only trust that, but devote to it. I always laugh about how I made an unconscious devotion to homeopathy, because I was like, oh, if it heals me again, I'll go and devote my life to it. I'll study it and blah, blah, blah. And I didn't realise that in that devotion that was made very unconsciously, I would end up birthing a whole modality with homeopathy at its core. It's like, oh, okay, this is how we got here. I had no idea that's what I was devoting to and committing to at the time, like all those years ago. But I'm so grateful that homeopathy chose me, and that all the ancient wisdom bodies kind of knocked on my door as I was healing myself. Like this is how I learned them. I stepped into this path when I was struggling the second time with chronic fatigue. And I was like, do you know what? I am ill again. Homeopathy healed me first. Like, I'm going to try that again. And I became a homeopathic practitioner. I learned energy healing. I did my Reiki masters. And I learned archetypal work as I journeyed. And the deeper and deeper I journeyed, this is how they called to me. They were like, here's the medicine. So I healed myself and then began to be able to heal others. And I'm so grateful that those wisdom bodies knocked on my door and called me into my witch, so that I could make homeopathy magical again and help women heal themselves. Gorgeous. I am so grateful that you're listening, if you're still listening. And I'm going to complete now with a poem that I love that speaks to what I've shared. But before I do, I just want to share because I'm very conscious I didn't speak to a practical how in this. And whilst there is no like 3 steps of like, okay, here's what to do to heal yourself, like there kind of is. Like there's a whole process that is mapped out that I guide women in, but there's some kind of practical takeaways that you could be with for now as a start. So I invite you to be with the following. Firstly, do you choose yes to self-healing? It's like what I was just talking to, like how I made an unconscious commitment. We often choose into self-healing without realizing we're choosing into self-healing, and it's better to make that a conscious choice. So my invitation is, like, firstly, knowing that it is challenging, that it is messy, that there's not like an XYZ and quick fix sticky plaster. Do you choose yes to self-healing? Knowing the requirements of you in that. That's a big inquiry to be with. Secondly, we need to start to connect to our bodies to start this process. So my invitation is begin a dialogue with your body. Like let her know that you're beginning to listen. You're devoted to healing yourself, and you're going to listen without shame, without shaming your sensations. Thirdly, like ask your body, what is it that my physical pains, my sensations, what is it that my body is trying to reveal to me of something deeper, of the underlying patterns? And that's, again, like that could be tricky to navigate by yourself, but I'm going to leave it as an invitation to start to see if there's something that can be revealed to you there, like by going into the body, asking, and just, again, be open to receiving whatever comes in that question. Like there's no right or wrong. And there might be a sense of like, you hear something and then you doubt it. You're like, oh, am I just making that up? Like this, but go with it. Stay open and see what comes up, and notice where you're doubting your wisdom and the intuition that's revealed. So there's 3 kind of more practical things as an opening, but if you would like to go deeper and begin walking this path, which can help you into learning how to heal yourself, I invite you to join us and us sisters in the Secret Witches Apothecary membership. Now, this is a new sacred space that I'm so excited about, which is designed to help you learn all of this wisdom out there. I just want to share that, like in there's going to be a library of archetypal remedies to work with. In fact, that's already in motion to help you get started, and particularly with reclaiming your witch, because that's kind of the first port of call, so that you can start to learn how to work with the remedies. But each month, there will also be what I call a witch clinic. And that's very practical based. There's going to be, it's a bit like a listener asked a question here, receive tailored advice. I'm going to show up and be in there to help, like give you pinpoint advice on what remedy you need to work with, give you prompts and inquiries and rituals and practices that are bespoke to you to help you work with the remedy that you need. It's a bit like I've kind of called it like having a healer in your back pocket for when you need it. Whilst also embarking on a journey of learning to heal yourself. So whilst I'm a healer that's going to point you back to healing yourself, because that's what I teach. And very much at your own pace. So if that sounds juicy to you, I would love to see you with us. It's not quite birthed yet, but if you visit nicolebarton.co.uk/membership, you can register your interest and you'll be first to hear when it opens. Just to add on that as well, I know the world is a little bit crazy at the moment, so there will be investment options to suit you. I'm being really cool to make this membership as accessible for women as possible to meet you where you are. So there's different options for that. So I'm going to finish with a gorgeous reading from Lucy Pierce, which is one of my favourites and just really seems to speak to what I was speaking to here. So I'm going to repeat that. It may be the first day of your life, the prime of youth, or several decades in, when medicine woman calls you. Your name on her list, her new initiate. She crept in whilst you were sleeping, when you overexerted, when you kissed him, or ate that, or lived there, or pushed too hard just one time too many. She crept in and curled up in your cells, your heart, waiting to meet you, longing to know you, longing for you to know her at last. And what feels like the end is in fact a beginning of a new road, an unknown path of pain and healing. She will show you how to slow down. She will run her fingers roughly through your life and help you sort the busyness from what matters. She will show you how to find support and who you really are beyond your roles and expectations. And even more, beyond the system the world has forced you into. She transports you into the timelessness of big pains and tiny joys, initiates you into your strength, into your love, into your courage, into a world beyond your control. She has sent me an invitation. I see yours too, tucked in your bag, amongst all the receipts and bills, the pens and detritus of life. Take it out. It is time. Whew. I love that. I love that so much. I feel really emotional. It just so deeply summed. I love Lucy Peters, by the way. She's also been on the show if you want to listen twice. She's got 2 episodes, so have a little dig around for those. She's magical. Just so speaks to the journey of pain and how it initiates us into knowing ourselves, expressing ourselves rather than suppressing, and the journey of healing, journey of being our own medicine woman. Thank you, my loves. I am loving you all so deeply. Please do let me know if you've got any questions. I love to respond to those. If you want to join us in the Secret Witch Sisterhood, which is our free Facebook group, then please do search Secret Witch Sisterhood and you will find us. But otherwise, I will see you next time. Lots of love. I loved that episode as ever. Here are my takeaways. Mainstream medicine, allopathy, differs in its worldview about quick fix healing to alternative, holistic approaches which focus on unsuppressing our souls and principles of like cures like. Because of that, mainstream medicine can struggle to heal mysterious pains that are really pointing us towards the deeper root cause underlying patterns. The witch can help us reclaim our power. Our pains are often unseen initiations into our true self-healing gifts and a deeper understanding of ourselves. True healing requires us not to suppress, but address underlying emotional and psychological causes that manifest physical symptoms. Archetypal remedies offer both a psychological and physical map to our healing, and learning to harness that inner apothecary of remedies can empower us to heal ourselves. This requires an openness to a new worldview, perhaps as well a slower pace of healing, and being willing to be in the messiness of discovery and begin to trust that, which we can feel resistance to in a world where we've been taught that there's a quick fix, but it is worth it when it truly heals us.